Hey everybody, have you ever been on a trip where the weather report says it's going to be sunny all day, and just as you get to camp the cloud moves in, and all of a sudden before you set up it just downpours? Now where I live, this seems to happen all the time. When I do a trip now, I don't even look at the weather report, I just go. And it's like the old saying, the best time to go fishing is when you can. Now having the right gear is essential in a rainstorm, but having great gear doesn't mean that you're gonna have protection from a heavy downpour where the rain is running down the suspension of your hammock into the hammock and right down your back. Now in this episode, we're gonna look at a little tip or trick that's gonna prevent that from happening. Doesn't matter what gear you have, this trick will always protect you. Now the first thing we should do before we get started, which I believe is really important, is to look at the unique properties of water. Now water is cohesive, which means it connects with itself as it flows. And water is also adhesive, which means it clings to other objects. And also, water can cause surface tension, which means for people using a hammock, is that the water could possibly skip over the water breaks. Water breaks are just objects that stop or redirects the water. In this case, they are connection points on the end of the suspension to the hammock. They can be a knot from a Beckett hitch, or a Marlin spike, or some type of hardware like a carabiner, or a cinch buckle, and also a whoopee hook. Now these type of connection points will almost always act as a water break, stopping and redirecting the water to the ground instead of into your hammock, where they're protected underneath the tarp. Now there's a possibility with the law of gravity. The more the angle, the more the speed and flow of the water. With the suspension at a 30-degree angle, in the fall and the springtime when there's little or no foliage on the trees, with a heavy rainfall, the water hitting the suspension and also running down the tree trunk onto the suspension and having a small rounded connection point like a carabiner or a whoopee hook, the water surface tension may skip over the water break and run down into your hammock. Now I never had this happen to me, but you never know. Now there's two solutions to this problem. And the first one is to make sure that your connection point is vertical, not horizontal. The connection points that are large and not rounded, but square in shape, work much better as a water break. But the main problem you may face is when your water break or connection point is not under the protection of the tarp, but exposed on the outside. Now this may happen for many reasons. For instance, like using a bridge hammock. Because a bridge hammock has two long sections of cordage on both sides that are connected from the spreader bars to the connection points on the end of the suspension, which can find itself exposed to the elements. Or a tarp that's too short, or setting the suspension back to give you more room, which we looked at in the first episode. Or another thing is having your tarp set high over the hammock. And there might be other situations. Now to solve all these problems, you're going to need another type of water break, which is called a drip line. A drip line is just basically some type of piece of cordage that you tie on to the suspension or the continuous loop that is attached to your hammock. So now, for whatever reason, when the water is running past your water break or your connection point and it's running down into your hammock, all you have to do is tie on a drip line that will stop and redirect the water to the ground instead of into your hammock. Believe it or not, the drip line is the best water break. It's better than any connection point. Now, when you go to tie on a drip line with a piece of cordage, there's no right way to tie it on. Just make sure the tail end is hanging down. Now, for those that have tarps that are too short, you still can use them. Even though that the connection point water break is outside the tarp, it's exposed to the rain where water would hit it and run down to the hammock, all you have to do is put on a drip line, tie it on between the connection point and the hammock where it's under the tarp, where it's protected. So when the water runs down to that exposed area, it will run down to the drip line, it will stop it and redirect it down to the ground. It's a good little tip to have a drip line with you all the time, just in case, you never know. But my favorite way to tie on a drip line is using a thin cordage in diameter, right around 6 to 8 inches, 15 to 20 centimeters long. Tie it into a loop, then tie it on as a Prescott knot. This makes it easier to slide up and down where you need it. And a little tip or trick, if you're in a jam and you don't have any type of piece of cordage with you, all you have to do is take off your shoelaces and just use it as a drip line. Now, another thing I'd like to share with you, and you should be aware of this, this happened to me about 6-7 years ago when my son and I were hiking on the Superior Hiking Trail. And during the night while I was sleeping in a hammock, it started to rain, and it rained heavy. And I woke up with water running down my back. And I knew I had everything set up perfectly, and I couldn't imagine what was happening. And I put my rain jacket on, I came out, and I seen the problem was the tag end of the whoopee sling was draped over the top of the, right above the connection point and over onto the continuous loop, making a bridge over the whoopee hook, and water traveled down the sling onto the tag end and onto the continuous loop, down the hammock and down my backside. And I correct that real quickly by just removing it. And you never know out there, so you always have to be prepared. So if you want 100% protection from the rain, think about using a drip line. If you have any questions or comments, please write them down below. I'd love to hear from you. This is The Marine. Thank you for watching, and God bless.
Appalachian sunrise meets my skin. Even with my eyes still closed, feel it coming in. Golden, I'll follow.